Welcome, everyone. We are heading inside the minds with Damien Correll, our creative director at Figma today. He's going to be sharing a presentation called Steal This Deck. I had the joy of watching an internal version of this presentation a couple of years ago at our internal Maker Week, and I was blown away and definitely implemented a lot of the best practices he's going to share today. So it was a true delight when he agreed to bring this to our community, and I can't wait for him to share this with you all today. Damien, thank you so much for being here. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Damien. I'm the creative director here at Figma. I lead the brand studio team. So the brand studio team does all of our kind of brand efforts. So from our core branding to the config branding to all the things in between. But I'm excited to share this presentation. Like Katie mentioned, this was an internal presentation that I put together for our Maker Week. Maybe 6 or 7 months into joining Figma. I've revised it every Maker Week to add new tips and tricks, but this is actually the first time that I'm going to be delivering a version of this presentation where we have a purpose-built slide tool. So Figma Slides did not exist in previous versions of this presentation. So I have modified a few things. Actually, a lot of my tips and tricks are no longer valid because we do have a tool that can do this, but I do have some, and I think some good tips that I'm going to be sharing. I'm going to start just getting it out there. I'm not a natural presenter. I rely on a prepared deck. That's what gives me confidence. I guess it makes sense. I'm a visual communicator, but design is storytelling, and storytelling is a slide deck. So therefore, the slide deck is the design. But really, it is this tried and true format that speaks this common language that your cross-functional partners and teams can read and understand and evaluate, and as well as your stakeholders too. So it is a really important artifact. The deck is a really important artifact of collaboration because it helps us wrap the things that we make with context. So this presentation is broken out in a couple different chapters here. It's also a number of different altitudes as well. We are going to be talking about some of the more conceptual ways of approaching a presentation, but also some sort of technical and practical tips as well. We're going to end this too with a bit of a demo, so showing off a couple things that I like to do in Figma Slides. But over the course of my career, I have helped a lot of others and myself tell stories, share work via a deck, and unveil new products. And even as that sort of senior leader on maybe a team that's putting together a presentation, I become that de facto designer on a collaborative deck. So I'm in there typesetting, I'm in there fussing with the sequence. And a presentation like this is hopefully to allow designers and non-designers to feel comfortable like getting in there. I want to teach you how to fish. I don't want to do it all. With that in mind, let's get into it. So here's the part of the presentation where I mentioned that I'll be using the word presentation and deck fairly interchangeably throughout this. Presentation is typically the whole package, and the deck is largely considered just the visual artifact. But I think my push here is to think that the underlying structure of your presentation is that deck. And that's the thing that you should be thinking about and the thing that can help you give structure to your entire presentation. So what makes a good deck? A good deck is a good story. And what is a good story? Good stories have a few things in common. They're entertaining, they're clear, they provoke an emotion or maybe even an action, and they're memorable. And I'm the father of a 9-year-old, and I think children books, actually picture books, are like maybe the best analogous for decks. There's the words and pictures work together in equal measure. There is a variety in the kind of text image relationships. Some pages might be full imagery with like maybe small amount of text, and then others might be a block of text with a smaller image. So that kind of like texture throughout a presentation or children's book is similar to a successful presentation. They also concisely communicate something in an entertaining way. And that something can be a lesson or have a takeaway, which I think a presentation really should strive for that as well. Most presentations have 3 distinct acts. They explain the current situation, so the context. They explain where you want to go, establish some sort of vision. And then lastly, the strategy part is how we'll get there. So context, vision, strategy, or put another way, the what, the so what, and the now what. We give and create presentations for all different types of purposes. So whether they are updates in an informational presentation, or they're designed to be persuasive to get buy-in or to move to the next milestone, but they tend to perform some sort of function. If they don't, otherwise they may as well be an email. There's this idea that I first picked up from Kurt Vonnegut. There's this pretty cool lecture that he gave. There's a QR code to a YouTube link. You should watch it at some point. But it was a rejected master thesis that he put together about the shape of stories. It was actually rejected because in his words, they said it was so simple and looked like too much fun. But essentially, shaping a story or seeing the shape of a story, you draw a line on two axes and you map the main characters' ups and downs. So the good things and the bad things that happen across the story. And it's fascinating to see him do it. He runs through a couple of different stories that you probably already know and you see. And yeah, and it makes sense. The image that he makes feels like the story. My completely unscientific, definitely not peer-reviewed attempt at presenting some story maps of common or typical presentations. You have the informational, which this one's kind of the most straightforward, which is you have the setup and then you have the information. It's a pretty linear presentation. Then you have something that's going to be more persuasive. So you have the setup, you have some sort of solution, you have feasibility maybe that kind of comes in there, and then you maybe have another solution or like a refinement of that solution, and then you have the, okay, we can get there, but, and then you have that kind of next steps, that sort of CTA, or that next action that you want that person to make. There's the educational, so there's some sort of setup, some sort of foundational component, maybe a demo, increased complexity, another demo, kind of continuing to ladder up. And there's also the inspirational too, which is this setup, which might take us a dip down, and then this sort of like lesson that kind of rises us throughout, and then some sort of CTA, maybe that's some kind of call to action at the end. Again, this is my kind of guess at what these sort of presentations look like. And there are a number of different presentations that I don't have represented here, but it's fun to think about, okay, if you're going to make a visual artifact, there should be another sort of visual component to how you want your audience to feel and what they want and how you want to relay that information. Speaking of relaying that information, thinking about the format that the deck is going to take, really it should be informed by the context in which the audience is consuming it. So if your intention is to create a presentation that is more of a self-study, so this is something that you send off to people with no voiceover and they consume it on their own, you're going to need a lot more text. You're going to need a lot more content per slide. The density is just going to get packed in there a little bit. You just don't have the person in the room bringing the story throughout. But then, on the far side of this is like the kind of TED Talk version, where you might just have large imagery or like single or like short pithy statement on the deck. And this is where you're going to completely rely on your VO. You're going to completely rely on your presenter bringing that story to life. We often find ourselves somewhere in the middle. Often presentations are given live or recorded. People then also want to refer back to that sort of the static artifact. So you want to balance that out typically. Now we know what makes a good story, like how to think about the format and shape. Where do we begin? Getting started is no doubt the hardest part of it all, but consider these draft milestones. In my mind, there's three big draft milestones. And the first draft, you get it out there. You create an outline, you block out your big ideas. It just makes it exist. It makes a file, it makes something, right? Your second draft is to make it functional. And so this is by stringing together your narrative a little bit more. Each section might be teeing up some of those takeaways, et cetera, et cetera. And then last one is the third draft is making it effective. So you amp up your storytelling, you polish your design, you make that presentation more memorable and actionable, perhaps editing a little bit more as well. Now, if you're adapting from a doc, remember a deck is not a document. It's not a traditional document, at least. I think the best sort of analogous here is like thinking about how like a film script might turn into storyboards that will later then be shot into a film. You got to consider your pacing. You got to consider some of the key visuals there. Yeah, and I think it's okay to shoot that high, to think of your final deck as being an Alfred Hitchcock film. Another factor, if you're going to adapt from a doc to a deck, it usually breaks down to one paragraph is the slide. So if you are turning a straightforward written document into a presentation, just keep that in mind. It helps you with the pacing, at least in the blocking out phase. I tend to start with the outline. I'm very much a visual maker and creator in that way. So I need to see things and manipulate things. So I do this, I create these little thesis stickies. And so this is something that I create in FigJam or Figma Design, where I write down the beats, and the thesis would be just like the key takeaways, block them out, and then I have some of those key messages that I want to make sure that I'm hitting in each section. And as I start to fill those out and I start to reorganize them a little bit, once I feel pretty good about that as an outline structure, that's when I start to bring it into an actual deck format. And this is, again, like an ideal process. So this is if I'm delivering a lecture or presentation somewhere, I'll tend to start here. And this really helps with avoiding any filler. Like, you really get to, these are the things that I absolutely need to communicate. And then I think from here, you actually can just reference back to it. And you're like, okay, is this slide telling everyone what the story archetypes are? Is this telling this is telling everyone how to make a draft? And I think doing that, I think you really get a pretty concise, at least starting point, and then you're able to fill that out with the rest of your narrative and visuals and all the other things that kind of bring this to life. And then edit. Really though, you just got to evaluate the work in what in it is irrelevant to this conversation, what is essential to this conversation. In my opinion, editing is not purely like an exercise in reduction. It's an exercise in bringing more clarity. So don't just focus on simplicity. Don't just say, oh, I have a 60 slide deck and I need to get it down to 30 slides. Like, maybe you do need 60 slides. Maybe you need 58. I think just like really focusing on the content itself and making sure that it's coming through to your audience. Okay, common mistakes. We all see them. These are a few that I tend to identify either when I'm like brought into a presentation to help fix it, or I'm in the audience watching a presentation. The first one, the big one, too much text per slide. I think this is often the impulse when we start in that first draft, or we're just trying to get everything out there. There's certain things that might be better on multiple slides than a single slide. So you got to, again, evaluate your content, what's essential there, and see if it is all essential, can you break it down into multiple slides? So a good example of this was a planning presentation, a bunch of content on this slide. Actually, there's actually more than it even appeared to be, because it was actually truncated initially. So there's 2 bullets per topic here, and this is not legible for anyone. So this is a great candidate for breaking it out into multiple slides. Because even if you take, okay, let me look at this and just make some smarter design decisions, this is still a very dense slide. This is not a slide. This is going into document sort of land. So I say choose your fighter here. Is it a document? Are you thinking of this as a dense document? Or do you want to play with that kind of horizontal format, the kind of deck format? You have sequence, you have time also a factor in here as well. So that one slide, you could probably break that down into 5 independent slides. You'll have like your overview slide, and then each section will be given the space for that content to breathe a little bit. So what could that look like? Just a quick redo of that. This is actually borrowing some of the templates that we have in Figma Slides. I just made a few modifications so it better suited my needs here. But we have these 4 topics. Another great thing about doing a slide like this, like being bold and confident in your typography and color, you get to use those as like signifiers throughout. In this exercise, I'm using each of these colors, like I'm establishing them here, and then I'm going to use them as kind of key colors for each of those slides. It makes it a little bit more memorable. Remember, those good stories are memorable, and showing you can make some of those like signals and help out your audience a little bit to have some sort of cognitive signal here that tells you, okay, I'm in this section, or when they have to refer to it later, they can remember the big blue slide of resourcing. Just an example of what it could look like if you broke that down. Again, leading with those key colors here. We have those two bullet points, a little bit more proud here, a little prouder here than they were in that initial slide. We can have the time and space to talk about these independently, talk about that bigger idea, and talk about those two supporting ideas. And this is just an example of flipping that. So the format and structure is absolutely the same. I technically designed two templates here, two versions here, and then I just quickly flip the colors to work for each section. Cool. Another common mistake, and this is a tricky one. This is, in theory, we are presenting information, but try to evaluate if you're putting like a big bar chart on a slide, and it's like super dense, and there's just a lot going on there, and you're going to be talking over it, and you're going to be talking about one particular aspect of it. Like maybe it's about forecasting, and we're seeing like an uptick in sales, for example, or maybe we're seeing like a trend of like more features that are like relevant to such and such audience. Present those ideas, present the things that are like that you're getting out of that data. So if that is like maybe not putting the bar chart on there, maybe just putting those key numbers, or maybe putting us, maybe isolating that bar chart to only focus on those ideas, but really resist the urge to just put all the information on there. Just get those ideas across. I don't have a visual for that, but you get that idea, right? The last one is lack of hierarchy. This one I feel is when we put all the things again on a slide, and we might not have the sort of design acuity to make some decisions on, should this type be larger than this one, or this should be smaller, should it be to the left, should it be right. But I think there are a couple of tips and tricks that you can use to navigate this problem, and also using templates I think is a good starting point, and you can learn a little bit too about hierarchy via templates. But I just have an example that I can walk you through here. So this is like a fairly simple slide here. We have a big theme, we have 3 ideas, and then sort of an explanation of each of those: our vision statement, our mission statement, and our values statement. One thing that we can do is play with the type hierarchy. And there's this great trick, it's like designer magic or something. You can, using scale and placement, you can actually help the reader go to specific sections of your deck or of your piece of design, and it usually works without fail. So using hierarchy, using type weight, as well as like point size to your advantage, really helps out in making sure that folks are consuming the content in a way that feels more digestible. Simple first move that we would maybe take with that slide is, let's break it down into 3 columns. This is a common trope, I think, in presentations. I'm probably used 3 columns more than 3 times in this presentation, but really just breaking it down. Okay, we have vision, mission, values. For whatever reason, people remember 3s too. Something about science, I don't know. I'm just a designer. But doing this just will help with this kind of visual read. You got a 1, 2, 3 here. You're also playing with the format a little bit better here with this like landscape format versus a vertical format. And then we're gonna just change the subhead to be a bolder version of the typeface, a little bit larger. And then we're gonna just allow the body copy to to exist at that sort of smaller point size, maybe even playing with the opacity, or like we're just having some different grays here, just kind of help create some contrast between those. And then we just have like little like bullets here. We have just like these little markers that we're using here to delineate each of these sections. These can be super informative, or in this case, they're a little bit more decorative, but they do help you tie some sort of key visual to each of these. Okay, the last mistake I want to discuss is poor wayfinding. And when I'm talking about wayfinding, I'm talking about maybe the things that exist on your slides, or the way you present your agenda, and make sure that the audience knows, okay, we're going through section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, or, oh, I know I'm in section 3. Just making sure folks know what to expect and then deliver on that promise. And actually, Aristotle actually has a great way of thinking about this. And it is, tell them what you will tell them. So this is the agenda, like making sure that's like upfront and like pretty clear, like what you want to get out of this conversation, and how we're going to talk about it. And then tell them. So those are the chapters. That's the actual content. But make sure you're like wayfinding and that those like with like chapter headings and things like that. And then lastly, tell them what you just told them. So that's the next step slide. That's the slide that you just wrap it all up, and then you get whatever you want to get out of that presentation. So that's like making some decisions in the room, if that's telling you what to expect in the next conversation, whatever it might be, that's your moment. And it's just really good to put a bow on that, on the entire presentation. Some ways that I'm just going to walk through like a quick example. Like you can imagine this as an agenda view, and then we can do some slight tweaking of this for our chapter pages. So in this case, like we're being really transparent. There's like kind of complete disclosure of what we're going to be talking about up front, and then you can see, okay, we're in the features section now, and we have 3 more sections to go, and hey, we only have 20 more minutes. I think sometimes it's helpful in that context, but it's just helpful to give everyone a bit of a heads up on where we're going, what we're going to be talking about, and where we are right now. This other thing that I like to do actually is in presentations that are perhaps like on a longer project or a project that's going to have multiple different phases. I think setting the context of what feedback is important right now, or why am I telling you this about this project or this milestone at this point, is this little indicator that we put at the bottom of some of our upfront slides. And this just indicates, hey, we're either really early on in this process, so we're like open to a lot of feedback, or hey, we're actually really close to delivery, so we want to focus the feedback on like things that get us to that next phase. It's just a small sort of indicator. It's not necessarily counting down the days or anything, but it just helps your audience know what feedback might be useful and what feedback might be derailing the conversation. So with that in mind, I just wanted to jump into a demo, and I can actually show you how that thing works. Let me see here. Just gonna need to share my screen. Okay, cool. So I'm in Figma Slides right now. Um, I had built this in Figma Design and bring it into all of our presentations. So as you can see here, I can just adjust this to be like, okay, we're going to be talking, we're early days, or hey, we're later in the process there. So a little helpful visual indicator at the bottom of our slides. So I'm going to walk through a couple things that I find really helpful and useful in Figma Slides. Um, First, we tend to use these little bento boxes quite a bit. So we actually have a number of these made that we can swap content in and out of. And then as you'll see here, like perhaps like I want to add our little Earthling logo. So this is maybe essentially like a product review. I can just grab this whole thing and I can make some adjustments here. So it's not going to scale everything. They're all maintaining the integrity of whatever I established with that bento. And then I can just copy this, paste it in there, and then just have that kind of like wayfinding that I was saying like earlier in your presentation. Something that I like about Figma Slides, or even designing slides previously in the Figma editor, is that you can be as structured as you want. Like you can have some rigor to it. You can use templates, but then you can also get in there and have a little bit more like of a free form. Design your slides in a little bit more of a free form capacity. So maybe if maybe I could have a template that looks like this, but I didn't. So just making that quick adjustment. Nice. I tend to, I don't heavily rely on grids for presentations, but I do like them as like an underlying structure to like help with some visual consistency. I just do a pretty simple 12 column grid. I usually don't play around with the rows too much, just because I don't think from slide to slide that's like super helpful beyond some of the furniture, the slide furniture they have. So this introduction here, making sure that is up in the top corner and not jogging around as I'm going through the slides. But in general, lots of blocks of text and stuff. I high it up a little bit more. But I do think it's important to play with thirds in presentations to the best of your ability. So maybe for a slide like this, I would maybe want to constrain it a little bit more to have more space for the text there. I think also another pretty good trick is if you want visual parity between both your image and your text, just almost like going down the middle and doing like a 50-50 split, erring on the side of making the image a little bit smaller so you have some room for your text. So, and speaking of text, one of the things that I like as a designer is that I can have a lot of control over typography in slides. In this example, I actually have this set to auto layout. So if you see the quote attribution down here is going to rag if I change it. So perhaps I think this quote is actually a little bit too long for this slide. I can make this adjustment here, and it's going to push that down here. And actually, I see that it's maybe a little too close. I'm going to just pull this handle down here, give it a little bit more space. There's also some other controls that I can make here. So in a quote like this, we often want the punctuation to be hanging. So here you see it as an inset thing. And if I select this block of text here, and then I go into the text panel here, I can actually, there's a selection here section that I can just check that here. And I have some hanging punctuation. So it's a little bit more a nice little like more formal typesetting. And then also, this is never desirable when you have a word on the line. And even if you have like a well-intended template, sometimes you do have to make those sort of changes. Your text just, I don't know, it shows you care when you do that. Another auto layout thing that I really like is how I might be able to like change columns here or add columns here. In this example, I have three three different kind of points that I'm trying to make here. Actually, this text here super long. Let me see. I'm gonna if I can shorten this with AI here. So let's see. Cool. So that gets that still has the same sentiment. Keeps that a little bit shorter and a little less like weird like visual funkiness that happens there. But what I want to do is I want to make this an auto layout frame. So they're already in a frame. I come over here, I hit auto layout, and what I want to do when I hit enter, I actually learned this trick recently. When you're in a frame and you hit enter, it selects all the items in a frame, and it's one of my favorite new tricks. So I'm selecting all of these columns here. I want to do fill container on both of these. So what I can do is I can actually like make this, I can adjust this here. And then if I want, maybe I'm satisfied with, I can delete the whole thing. Maybe I just wanted two here. So I can delete that and you see how it fills the space now that I've used auto layout. But I don't want to do that. I have a fourth point that I want to make. So I can just duplicate it. I'm not a DA. So I'm doing my best like DA impersonation right now. This is one of my first demo. So bear with me. But I can just duplicate the column and then now I have a 4-up instead of a 3-up. Cool. I want to show a couple more things. What else do I have in here? So I shared a little bit about the kind of the sort of chapter slides, but okay, I know what we can do here. So we have this new app that we're making, this fictitious company that I'm working for. And we have a new app icon, and the marketing team maybe dropped in this mock-up. It's beautiful, but it's sitting on the wrong color. Also with AI, I can just hit remove background and give it a second. Yeah. And it gets rid of that. So I have a more like seamless slide here. But actually, maybe I miss having some contrast here. So I can just go over here and I can select a new fill color and kind of put that behind that and have just a little bit more contrast in that slide. Another thing that I love doing is putting a prototype in a slide. I remember before years ago in Figma Editor when I was presenting to a client, I put the website in situ on a slide and started manipulating it in the meeting. And like the client's brain was like, they had to stop. They were like, "What are you doing? How are you doing this?" It was a good magic trick. But now it's actually even easier. You can drop prototypes into Figma Slides. So you hit this little live interaction button here, and then prototypes, or you could just drop a link. I think you just paste the link in as well. I have some Earthling prototypes. So I want to just drop that in here and give it a minute to load. Cool. And then, all right, I just want to get it in the center without moving it. So now you have a live prototype in there, and I can actually let me see. Let me present it quick. Oh no, sorry, I'm gonna flip through this. There we go. So now I have like in this part of the presentation, I can show off our new AI booking feature. I can actually even click into the prototype and scroll through, which is super, super nice and helpful. This prevents you from having 5 different slides that kind of unpack that one perhaps simple idea or interaction. Another thing that I like to do, we actually here at Figma, we create a number of different resources and sort of slide templates in the pre-Figma slide days, but we can borrow some of those components and put them into slides. So we have a couple things like a 2x2. Say you're putting together a presentation and you need to have some sort of competitive analysis and you want a 2x2 graph would maybe do that. This is a component that you can adjust and it fluctuates and changes to the context there without like losing any of the integrity. Also, if you see on here, I can change these labels. Oh no, I'm live typing. It's like there we go. And I have a couple of different variants here. So perhaps I want a more of a kind of boxed in view here, and then I can just start to map my competitors against my fictitious competitors against Earthling. Cool. Well, that's all the demo I have. Thanks for bearing with me on my first live demo I've done.
Not bearing with you at all, Damien. People were blown away. Lots of tactical tips there and lots of people saying you're a natural, you're awesome at this. I think we need to get you doing more demos. So good. And with that, I will take over the screen share here and share my screen so we can dig into some questions. Does that sound good, Damien?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. Are you seeing my slide that says, what questions do you have? Yes, great. Everyone, it's time for questions. We have many questions already rolling in and more coming in. So I'm going to try to bring as many of those as we can to Damien in the time that we have left here. And we're going to kick it off. So you can put those again in the Q&A section in Zoom. So open up the Zoom toolbar, click on Q&A, and that's where you can drop in your questions for Damien. And we're going to start with our first question from Michelle here. Damien, what's your preference or an industry wayfinding best practice for image and text layouts? Image to the left of text or to the right of text? Thoughts on this?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I think I default typically to text on left and image on right. I feel like that's like a pretty common pattern. I don't really know why that is exactly though, but I feel like that's a pretty like typical pattern. And we see that with like templates that we end up making or other kind of presentations that we consume.
Awesome. There we have Damien's best practice. Thanks, Michelle, for that question. Our next question comes from Kate. So, Damien, you talked about the more or less section, how you can go from more text or more visuals. How do you think about balancing that, the visuals versus text for live presentations versus having an artifact to follow up with after? Do you create separate decks when you want to serve both of those needs?
Yeah, at times it does maybe require two different artifacts. I think it's all what makes you comfortable in presenting. I think I don't like reading off a slide. So sometimes I will pull away certain content and just have either visuals and key themes. I just don't think it creates a great presentation and a great experience for the audience. But I just think it's like less effective because I think people are naturally going to read what you have up there, and then it just looks like you're just parroting what's there. At times I do create two different presentations. It all depends on the audience. If it's like maybe like a company all hands, I might want to pull some of the copy away and then maybe share like a more standalone artifact later. But if it's something that people are going to refer back to a lot, then you might want to keep the text in there. So it all really depends on what your kind of comfort level is, but I do think really thinking about how will this be commonly used? Will it just be a kind of one-time thing, or will it be a thing someone refers back to and that can answer your question?
Awesome. Thanks, Damien. Next
Mhm.
question is from Dean and is a topic near and dear to my heart. Dean asks, are there any interactive capabilities that can be used in Figma Slides for a presentation? Example, have everyone click a button to vote. And so, Damien, I brought in an example here, but I was wondering if you could speak to how you might do interactive elements in a slide presentation.
Yeah, so I think with the interactive capabilities, I think you should be thinking about what you're trying to get the kind of group mind. What would you want to understand? I think sometimes a discussion can be helpful, and sometimes a kind of quick kind of gut read of what decisions we need to make. And so I think it all is like contextual. I love the idea that there's like now like that presentations can be a bit more two-way, and they don't just have to be like I'm delivering information to you. And I also just like that they can speed up the process a little bit and get us like all gravitating towards one direction, or get us focused on the problem area that we all think is like most important.
Awesome. Thanks, Damien. And what we are looking at right now on the screen is interactive elements in Figma Slides. So what we did here is we dropped in a poll that's in Figma Slides, and I can quickly demo this live. Nothing like another live demo here. So if we go back to our Steal This Deck presentation that Damien was just in, the live interactive elements are down here in the bottom of the toolbar. And then the one we're using right now, to your question, Dean, is the poll option here. So you can drop that right in. And then when you go to the presenter view, you can share that link and other people can vote. And it looks like, Damien, of the common mistakes that you shared, presenting info, not ideas, is our winner
Mm,
here. And too much text.
that's
Yeah,
fascinating. Yeah.
it is fascinating. So everyone who's voting, oh, we got some friends here. Yo, Justine, Krista. I definitely share that one as well. I voted for too much text. Awesome. Great question, Dean. Thanks for talking through that. We also got a lot of love for the prototyping that you showed, Damien. We might demo that if we have a minute at the end. We can show that again. But we have so many
Yeah.
other great questions. Let's go to one from Ahana about Damien, where do you get your design and storytelling inspiration from before you start mocking up your presentations?
Sure. So I think from like a visual standpoint, I love printed ephemera, and I was a more traditional graphic designer earlier in my career. So I actually love thinking about like book design and the sort of analogous there between book design and deck design and presentation design. So I sometimes start there with just thinking about, oh, okay, I love this like photography to be big and bold, or I'd like to split this presentation down the middle where I'm like having like blocks of text on the left and big bold imagery on the right. And just like thinking about my formats maybe a little bit there. I think they're like storytelling. I think we all have seen like great presentations in our lives and see, okay, what kind of captures you? What's the thing that kind of hooks you in? Or why did you like, why did that resonate with you? And sometimes I just like to reverse engineer that a little bit or like think a little bit more. Was it like, oh, was it the kind of anecdote? Was it the story that was like told that kind of really framed up the problem space? So it all depends on the project that I'm working on. So what am I pulling from or what am I thinking about? But I think thinking about what has been effective or what has excited you is often just like a great place to start, even if you're talking about a deck in a presentation. I think that's like a just like a I don't know, a nice place to a natural place to start.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, and great question, Ahana. On to the next question from Rose. Rose asks, how many presentation designers work at Figma? And here, Damien, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit just about like general resourcing for presentations. How do you think about what presentations are you staffing through your team? Who's designing presentations here at Figma?
Yeah, great question. We actually don't have anyone that is a designated presentation designer as their kind of full-time job. The brand studio team, there's a number of designers on the team, but what we try to do, and we try to make sure that everyone is good at putting presentations together. So we demonstrate it through how you value your own work and how you value bringing others along and into your like the vision that you might have. What we tend to do is we put presentations together through that lens and make sure that everyone feels confident that um, they have a they have the means to bring their cross-functional partners along or stakeholders on board. We also like we tend to like I'll tend to review things with the team as well and give them tips on, okay, yeah, like you jumped right into the details, but I think you need to unpack a little bit like the why behind it, and maybe you can do that through showing like the way it is today. And so yeah, we don't have any, this is a more long-winded version of saying we don't have any, but we do think it's like a skill set that all designers should have, but really everyone should have. It's a communication tool, it's a collaboration tool, and being able to present and the, use a tool like Figma Slides or any kind of presentation tool for that matter to get your idea across. I think everyone should feel comfortable and confident doing that.
Absolutely. And we have some related questions that talking about templates and like resources that you're providing to the team. So I'm going to give you three questions here, Damien, and then let you speak to them. One from Misha about how strict you are about employees sticking to the official branded deck and thinking about enabling them. Then we have an anonymous attendee asking about suggestions when you have to work with a branded company template. Oh, actually, I think that's the same question as the one from Jess. So I think that was Jess. So Damien, maybe you can speak to what templates are you providing for the team? How strict are you? Like how upset do you get when people go off template, or is that fine? And how you think about enabling people to use those templates as you create them?
Yeah, and one of the things that's like always sort of embarrassing, someone presents something to me and they apologize immediately, and I'm like, I am not a I can promise you I am not a stickler on these things. I think I value them, but I think it's actually fun to see how folks express themselves visually through a presentation. We had this resource for a while called the Cupboard, which had some sort of kind of canonical like slides and like templates and stuff that people can pull from. We have some version of that now with Figma Slides with like our templates. But actually, one of the things that we did with the Cupboard that I still want to bring into how we think about making internal presentations is this sort of idea that you can take. They're almost like stickers. Like there's like things or like components that you can grab and you can put on your presentation, and you can make it a little bit more ownable or personable. So our Fig Nation is our internal all hands, and it's always fun and interesting to see how people use the deck format and use the resources that we provide to make something uniquely theirs. So I think I don't know. I'm not too bullish on, okay, everything has to like feel like super rigid. I think there should always be a little bit of flexibility. I think creating a template system that has some flexibility in it is the only way you're going to get like good results in the end. I think otherwise everything's going to look the same to a fault, or you're going to get some like weird version of something if I'm trying to express something that the template does not provide for. So I think having some flexibility in there is like always pretty important. But yeah, you have to give people resources. You have to give people the things to make them feel confident and like to be able to put things together. And then kind of where they take it, results may vary, but I often find that it is like kind of refreshing to see a personality emerge through how someone might use it, even a templatized version.
Love that advice. And that's reassuring to me, who was often that person apologizing for making things
Please don't.
awkward. Thanks, Damien. Question from Gary about your thoughts on just black and white, more like wireframes versus adding more color to your presentations.
Yeah, it's good to be reserved and restrained, I think, and in most of your slides. There's always the impulse to maybe punch things up or to have a ton of variety there. But I think finding your opportunities perhaps in your chapter slides or slides where you're not going to have a ton of text on and it's maybe just kind of punctuates your presentation versus having it throughout the entire thing. So I tend to default to all like white and black slides, either black background or white background, depending, for a lot of content forward presentations, and then I just like use punches where it makes sense. But I think yeah, starting from that place and then punching it up is easier than having a pretty wild presentation and you try to tone it down a little bit.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think we're going to end with this last question. There's a lot of excitement around templates, and Matthew asked they want to see more about template styles, and Sarah asked, can you create styles similar to regular Figma? So Damien, I was wondering if it's okay if we end with, I'll do a quick demo of saving those templates, and we can
Yeah,
speak to the styles, and then maybe you can speak to how you're bringing in styles from Figma and how you think about applying styles versus doing something custom for presentations. Does that sound good?
yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So for a quick demo on how to do this, so if you're in your deck, the place where you can apply those styles are the text and the colors. And so when you click on text, you can apply the text styles here, which will apply to the text in the desk. So if you change the text or when you apply a new template style, it will apply the style that's in that template. So this is where you can start applying the template, and then also the colors. When you bring in a new slide, so if I sorry to bomb your deck here, Damien, but if I bring in a slide from another template, I can then switch that template style to apply the template that Damien had used in the rest of this deck, and even shuffle that a little bit until I get it to fit in with what I'm looking for here. So that's applying the text styles and the color styles that are in that template. So that's how you set that up. And then when you want to go and publish a template that you've created, you can do that up from the share button here. And then, oh, actually, this isn't in our deck. So I'll just go to this other one that I have here. This isn't in our space, sorry. So I'm just bringing this other deck that I had here. You go to the share button here and then click this publish template option. That then allows you to select which of the styles you have in this deck that you want to apply to that template. I'll choose one, click select, and then I can go ahead and publish this to everyone at Figma or just to a specific team that I'm in right now. Once I publish, that then is available to everyone when they go to create those new decks. They'll see all of the Figma specific or your organization specific templates there. So that's how you can do that. Damien, do you want to speak a little bit to how you think about applying styles to templates or creating something custom for your templates?
Yeah, I think the process of creating a template is always interesting to me because as a designer, you want to respond to the content. So I actually really like the way what we tend to do is we'll start with a kind of basic, like here's like the kind of 5 or 6 different sort of slide typologies that we typically need. And then what we'll end up finding is that, oh, we're like leaning into this a little bit more. We're using more of this 3 up. Do we have a version of that's like vertically stacked or something? And then we start to build that out as we in a response to it. So we've been doing that a little bit more on the studio, with the brand studio. We have like our own sort of templates just for presenting ideas and concepts. So just like removing the like perhaps the noodling that we do as brand designers to like reinvent the deck every time. So we've been trying to streamline that a little bit. But what we end up doing is we keep adding to the kind of the template options there, the slide template options, as we like understand, oh, when for presenting a website, for example, we need like a ton more real estate on the right side than if it's in a desktop versus like a mobile view. So there's like things like that that we've been learning along the way. And I actually like that it's like not precious, where we're like, okay, this is the 10 slide template, run with it, deal with it. We've been iterating on it and changing it as we go. Sometimes too, you set up the text and you're like, that text is way too large actually for the actual like using it practically. So we'll end up like making some adjustments. So yeah, just like not being super precious about it, but getting something so you have some consistency. So you're building intentionally when you do have to create that, like, that sixth or seventh slide that you didn't include in the initial batch.
Love that advice. And last tip on this, we are going to have another live stream next Thursday, all about creating custom templates for your organization. We have another pro demoer, Miggy from the DA team, who's going to be bringing all kinds of pro tips to that live stream. So join us then if you want to learn more about how to apply your styles, how to bring in your Figma assets, and create those custom templates for your organization. With that, Damien, thank you so much for bringing this incredible presentation to the group. So many questions we didn't get to, but so many questions that we were able to answer, and we really appreciate you bringing all this advice and sharing this with us. Thank you, Damien.
Thank you all.
And we hope you all take this, steal this deck. We'll be sharing the deck. We'll be sharing the recording. So steal this deck, use these tips, and happy presenting.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.